From Black Friday with all the buying, credit cards to Christmas get-togethers, gift getting and gift wrapping, we hear Silent Night sung by our favorite singer on the speakers in our favorite department store, while we stand in line to buy gifts we really can't afford, for people we hardly talk to at any other time of the year. Peace on Earth? This is insanity. What if this was the year we took it back? This can be the year, our year, when we put down the garland and strings of Christmas lights as the heralds of the season and look into the eyes of Christmas. Hope, peace, joy, love. This year, the battle for Christmas.
Well, hello again, everyone. If you join us a little bit later, my name is Joel, and I'm the lead pastor here. For those of you joining us online, my name is still Joel. But thank you for allowing us to be part of your journey towards Jesus. We hope you're well today. And if you're in the house, we really hope you're well today. You're going to get us all sick. But whether you're joining us online and you're sick or well, or whether you're joining us here in the house, I want to say welcome. And also, an interesting little tidbit, if you didn't know this, we have discovered as Americans a surefire way to deal with the post-Christmas blues, and that is the after-Christmas sales. You know, believe it or not, on the surface, we do these after-Christmas sales for, we give the excuse of practicality. We give the excuse of, well, I get to save some money, and that's true. I mean, we are amazing. Marketing has so conditioned us to where we will buy something we don't care about as long as it's 50% off. That same piece of junk we have looked over for a month and a half, we suddenly find so valuable the second they slap 75% off on it. And that's our surface reason. That's the surface thing we say. But then researchers, sociologists, they have gone a little bit deeper, and they try to figure out, why do we do this? Just marketing aside, because we will buy stuff in after Christmas sales even if it's not marked down. Why do we do this? And so they started researching this, and the answer was really simple. It was a way for us to stave off the post-Christmas blues. It was a way to soften the blow back into regular time. You know, if you're like me, you kind of live in this weirdness between Christmas Day and New Year's Day. Even if you're going back to work, you don't quite know what day it is. You just find yourself eating all the time, and you're not sure if it's Monday or Saturday, and you wake up one day and you go, oh, today's Sunday. And then it's just weird. And then you hit the new year. Well, these post-Christmas sales do this. This apparently helps us ground ourselves a little bit to get ready for when it goes back to normal. Who knew? And by the way, just in case you're counting, you have 362 days to prepare for next Christmas. It's a day longer this year because this year is a leap year. 2020 is going to be amazing. New Year's Eve, Christmas Day, they're all like 3-day weekends. Cinco de Mayo is on Taco Tuesday. I mean, it's going to be an amazing year, okay? But you do have that leap year thing, and that throws everything. So you have one more day to prepare, but don't be lazy. Okay, the time is now to start preparing for next Christmas. Even for someone who is part Christmas elf, this can be a little hard. It can be a little hard transition going back into regular time when all the Christmassy stuff disappears and the red and the green and the blue and the snowflakes, they start to get packed away. And, we push the season as far as we can at our house. We keep our Christmas light show going until New Year's Eve, and then we change it to a New Year's Eve show. And then once New Year's Day hits, that's it. I unplug it all, and it starts to come down. But I push it as far as I can because it can be a little hard to go back to regular life. And that's human. That's human nature. I mean, after all, we understand we do this to ourselves, right? I mean, it's all this hoopla and push towards one single event. We have parties, and we buy gifts based on one single event. Christmas is a unique thing in our culture. Okay, because as a culture, I cannot imagine any other single event that simultaneously reaches back into the nostalgia of our childhood while also giving us hope for a brighter future. As a culture, I don't think there's another event that does both of those at the same time. It's very unique. And so we get past it. Well, of course we're a little sad about it. Of course we are. If you feel a little weird and a little down because it's kind of ending, you're normal, and there's nothing wrong with that. As a kid, I remember Christmas Day would never come. It just seemed to take forever to get here. Now, I'm 42, it just seems to come around like in a month. And then my parents, who are in their upper 70s, they talk about it seems to come around every week. You know, time speeds up. And I used to kind of think, well, that's just kind of I don't know, I just thought it was kind of weird. And then I had a friend of mine who sat down and thought about this. And he said, it's a mathematic issue. He said, when you're 5 years old, Christmas is 1/5 of your life away. Think about it. 1/5 of your life is how long you have to wait for the next Christmas. But if you're 40, it's 1/40th of your life. If you're 80, it's 1/80th of your life. Perspective changes everything. Perspective does that to us. It's just the way we perceive time and how we live our life. And it probably does seem for some of you like, you might as well leave the Christmas decorations up because you're going to need them tomorrow. I mean, it probably does. Please don't. But it probably feels that way. And that can be what we can actually leverage right now as we talk about this battle for Christmas. Back on December 15th, when I was in Chicago and Tony did a fantastic job bringing that message, he made a comment towards the end of that message, and I think he said it in both services. But he said, the battle for Christmas is not just fought between November 26th and December 25th. The battle for Christmas is fought 365 days a year. See, because the battle is not with the culture, the battle is with us. The battle is in me, the battle is in you. So as someone who is part Christmas elf, who has to also adjust to being back in regular time, I want to tell you this morning what Christmas means to me. Because just maybe you'll find something really special and unique about what it can mean to you as well. And maybe the Christmas blues will look a little differently on the other side of this. We are in the book of Galatians this morning. I referenced it earlier. Galatians chapter 4, verses 4 through 7. It's not a Christmas passage at all. But yet, this is what Christmas means to me. The Apostle Paul writes, when the set time had fully come, God sent His Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those under the law, that we might receive adoption to sonship. Because you are His sons, God sent the Spirit of His Son into our hearts, the Spirit who calls out, Abba, Father. So you are no longer a slave, but God's child. And since you are His child, God has also made you an heir. So first I want you to see God has been working throughout history. That little phrase, when the set time had fully come. Now, I use an electronic version of the Bible. I don't care if you use electronic. I don't care if you use print. Just get into the Bible so it gets into you. I really don't care which one you use, okay? But in my electronic version, I've got that one phrase highlighted every way the software lets me. I don't think there's a single other highlight I can put on it and still make it readable. Because that one phrase is packed with significance. When the set time had fully come. In other words, God has been weaving all throughout history. He's been working through everything in cultures, everything in society, everything around the planet to bring about that moment in Bethlehem. I mean, just take the recent part that we've talked about. Just take the Christmas story. I mean, Jesus came from the family line of David. Now, God had to work that out through Mary. Then He had to work out the adoption by Joseph. God had to work that out with their family trees. Then He had to get this couple to Bethlehem. They didn't live in Bethlehem. Oh, so He had these Romans take a census, and He gets them to Bethlehem. Wow, how'd they make it to Bethlehem? Because the Roman road system made it possible to travel safely. Wow, I mean, that's just the recent part of the story. And God has been working from the very beginning to bring all these pieces together. So when the set time had fully come, God sent His Son. Now that phrase is amazing to me because it flies in the face of this weird idea that people outside of Christianity can get, and frankly, some of us inside Christianity can get, that there are two gods. You know, there's the God of the Old Testament who's ill-tempered and impatient and angry all the time and wrathful and vengeful. And then there's the New Testament God who's Jesus, who's kind and gentle and goes around petting sheep all the time. So we have kind of these two ideas, and yet the Bible makes it clear they're not different. They're the same person. And both those are extremes which aren't even reasonable to the Scriptures. But it was the Father, that, God of the Old Testament. I can't stand that expression, but you know what I mean. That is the Father. That's the God who sent His Son. He dispatched his son to earth. He did that. He worked that out. This was not something Jesus just argued with his dad about and said, I'm going to do it anyway because I love him and you hate him. No. The Father said, go, and Jesus said, of course I will. Yes, absolutely. We want to pretend like there was some kind of fight in the mix, and there was no fight. We want to pretend there was some kind of struggle in the mix between the Father and the Son because the Father wanted to smite us and the Son just wanted to love us. There was no debate in heaven. The Father dispatched the Son. And then we have these beautiful qualifiers that he sends Jesus under the law, not under sin, because Jesus was sinless, but he's born under this restraint of the law. And all the law really did was show how sinful we were. It's like an amazing thing happened to me when I was a child. My dad would tell me, don't do something, and that became an invitation for me to do it. And then I'd get in trouble, and I'd somehow go, why did I get in trouble for that? Well, he did tell me not to do it, but see, that's how we are. We are sinful. So that's what we do. We see what the Bible tells us to not do, and we take that as an invitation to go out and do it. So God says, don't do this, and we do it. That's because we're sinful. Jesus, though, wasn't sinful. So Jesus heard the constraints of the law. I mean, he wrote the law. He's God. But he was able to keep the law completely and fully and perfectly. And you have that little phrase, born of a woman. I mean, the reminder of the incarnation, what we just talked about last Sunday. That the Father wrapped his Son in flesh. And he gave us Jesus. He gave us Christmas. So God had been working throughout all of history in order to bring about our future. In order to bring about that moment that we could be redeemed. That moment that we could actually receive that gift that the Father was giving. He sent Jesus to redeem those under the law. Folks, that's us. Under the law, under the constraint, under the curse of sin, those who live in a way that we cannot be good enough to get to Him. That the gulf was so big between us and heaven that God simply came down to us. He gave us that gift of redemption. And he says that we redeemed from under the law, and that we are adopted as sons. Now, it's possible that we can read this as 21st century Americans, and we can look at that and maybe draw back a little bit, because we hear the word sons, and we start thinking, does that mean it doesn't apply to ladies? I mean, after all, I don't go into my house and look at my family, which is one woman, one girl, and one boy. I don't say, hey, men, come on, because there's a woman and a girl in the room. I have to say at least, hey, y'all, come on. You see what I'm saying? But we read sons, and we kind of think, does that mean it doesn't apply to ladies? No. The Apostle Paul is not making a gender statement. He's making a legal statement. He's writing to people who are living in Roman culture. They're Roman citizens. These Galatians are not Jewish people. They're not his people. They are Gentiles. They're like us. They understood Roman adoption law. They understood inheritance law. They understood that. He's making a statement to say, when we are redeemed from under the law by Jesus, we are adopted as sons of God. What that means is a son under the Roman system was the inheritor. The son is the one that received the father's inheritance, received the parents' inheritance. Yes, there was provision for wives and girls. Yes, of course. But the lion's share went to the men. So Paul is reminding these Galatians, when we are brought into the family of faith, we're not just brought in as some kind of low-level person. We're brought in as sons, legal heirs. So that means, ladies, you want to be sons, legally speaking. You want to be sons of God. That's what he's saying there. He's saying that we are adopted with all the rights and privileges of sons. Sons of God. Now, who's the other Son of God we know about? Jesus. So think about it. Because of Jesus, we can now be as close to the Father as Jesus is to the Father. Families who adopt, they have a day they celebrate. You know what they call it? The day that the adoption is final. You know what they call that day? Who knows it? Gotcha Day. They call it the Gotcha Day. See, Christmas is like our Gotcha Day. That was the day that adoption became possible, that we were able to be redeemed by the Father, that we were able to be brought into His family. And when He brings us into His family, we now have all the rights and the privileges as His kids. You know, it doesn't matter in Roman culture or Jewish culture or American culture. It doesn't matter how important your dad is. You're not afraid to go in to talk to your dad. It doesn't matter. Your dad could be president. Your dad could be, a pastor. Your dad could be just somebody. But it didn't matter. You weren't afraid to go in there and talk to them because they were your dad. They were daddy, Papa. See, that's what he's saying with this phrase, Abba. It's an Aramaic term. It's a phrase that a Jewish child would have used only of their father. Nobody else would have called that man Abba but his own kids. And Paul says, because we've been adopted by Jesus, we now look to the Father and we can call him Daddy. The Creator of the universe says you can call him Daddy. You ought to try praying that way sometime. Instead of getting all formal, Heavenly Father, we bless thy holy and rich name abundantly. Why don't you just go, hey, Daddy, it's me. Isn't that close? Some of y'all are like, well, that's a little too intimate. You're his kid. My kids don't look at me and call me Dr. Dad. They do kidding around. They don't say, Dad, hi. Hey, just say, hey, Dad, I'm hungry. Dad, I'm thirsty. Dad, I need this. So when you pray, when you talk to God, that's what Jesus has given you, and that's what Jesus has given me, that he has created a way for us to actually look at the Almighty and go, hey, Daddy, here I am again. I need something. And you know what? He's okay with it. I think that's the greatest part of all. The Creator of the universe listens to us. So what does Christmas mean? Christmas means God can adopt us. That's what Christmas means. I mean, it means God is able to make me his kid. Without Christmas, there would have been no cross. There would have been no resurrection. There would be no adoption. There would be no redemption. I would be lost and bound for hell. But because of Christmas, God made a way to deal with the permanent problem of my sin and my filth and your sin and your filth. God made a way to expunge that, to clean up the record. And he did that through the life of his Son. Far from being this vengeful, wrathful, bitter old man up in heaven always trying to kill us, this was the God who loved so much that he gave his own Son for the likes of me. Christmas means God can adopt us. Later this week, as you're tracking through our daily devotional, you're going to get to this passage. I think this passage comes up tomorrow. But it's Ephesians chapter 1. I want us to read this all together, because you're going to read this later this week. You're going to talk about it this week. But I want you to see it. Think of this like a preview, because it fits with this whole idea. Ephesians chapter 1, verses 3 through 10. And let's read it out loud from the screens, okay? Let's do this. Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who has blessed us in the heavenly realms with every spiritual blessing in Christ. For he chose us in him before the creation of the world to be holy and blameless in his sight. In love, he predestined us for adoption to sonship through Jesus Christ, in accordance with his pleasure and will, to the praise of his glorious grace, which he has freely given us in the one he loves. In him we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins, in accordance with the riches of God's grace that he lavished on us. With all wisdom and understanding, he has made known to us the mystery of his will according to his good pleasure, which he purposed in Christ, to be put into effect when the times reach their fulfillment, to bring unity to all things in heaven and on earth under Christ. In other words, Christmas means God can adopt us. That's the theme this week as we're finishing up this devotional. God can adopt us. So, what do we do now? Even if you understand it intellectually, what does that mean that God can adopt us? What do we do now? Well, the first thing is what I've been telling us pretty much all month. Work on keeping this idea of Christ Mass spirit this week. Remember, the word Christmas comes from the Middle English expression Christ Mass, the worship of Christ, worshiping Jesus. That's what Christmas is about. The word literally means worshiping Jesus. What can you do this week to keep that attitude, that spirit, that idea? What can you do to actually worship Jesus this week? You got a great start on it, because here you are together doing it, okay? Great start. What are we going to do tomorrow? Okay? What are you going to do this week? Remember, we win wars by winning battles. We win battles by winning the short skirmishes, okay? Let's win some skirmishes this week. Also, how are you going to live differently because of Christmas? If you are the adopted legal heir of the Almighty Creator of heaven and earth, you're going to live differently. You're going to walk differently. You're going to talk differently. For one, you're not going to let the devil convince you that you're worthless, because that's not true. You were worth the Son of God's life. So you were worth a lot. So you're not going to believe that lie. But then again, you're not going to be arrogant about it, because you know that where you'd be without Him is hell. So you know that you've been given grace so you can be given heaven. So, you see there's a balance there, but you're going to live differently. How are you going to live differently? What are you going to do? What are you going to do to live differently, to act like an adopted child of the King? What are you going to do to celebrate your gotcha day in Jesus? And practically, I want to really encourage you to finish strong with the devotional book. Now, hopefully throughout the month, if you've joined us at different times, you've still gotten this. Maybe you're here today and you've never gotten this. We still have a few more available, and maybe you missed most of the month, but you can still finish strong. We'll give you a copy of this. We've got a few more left. There's no use in us having these, because they're basically based off this year's calendar. They're not much use in the future. But we'll give these out. But you have a few more days. We reran this all the way through the end of the month. It goes all the way through the 31st. And we talk about this week, again, about adoption, but we also talk about not only finishing 2019 well, but actually setting yourself up to start 2020 well. You're going to read this week why I don't make resolutions. You're going to read instead what we do. You're going to read about what our staff team does, what we've been doing for a few months to get ready for 2020. We talk about that. It's not a secret. We're trying to share tricks to grow in Jesus here, okay? Some shortcuts, some hacks. I don't care what word you use. We're trying to help each other grow in Jesus here. And that means living differently. That means living like Jesus really came, living as if Christmas really happened. So yeah, maybe you might feel the blues just a little bit because all the hoorah goes away. But don't pack up the baby with the manger scene, you know what I'm saying? Don't pack up Jesus with everything else. Keep that part. It's because of Christmas that we can be adopted by Jesus. That means I'm a child of God with all the rights and privileges thereof. That's what Christmas means to me.